Grappling with Podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management.
Like the inside of a
Our
fake
mission
leg.
is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with.
Good morning.
Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice.
Spray this in your
Please
eye.
seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
Bill is a licensed buffoon.
Oh.
He says
Perfect
things that are a little squirrely. Do not hold these things against his gym mates, his family, Chris Hardy, Harry Hardy, or anybody at his gym.
Welcome.
Hi.
How you doing?
Acknowledge your wife first.
I'm going to introduce her because some people may be new to the podcast.
You just have no respect for women in this world.
Dang. It's okay. I'm used to it.
I know.
Oh,
and I hate that.
It's okay.
Are you an ally?
Look at me.
You are, aren't you?
Look at me. Blonde, blue-eyed ally.
A feminist?
Yes, he is. He's a male feminist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I support trans males in female sports.
Okay.
That's not right. That's wrong. Trans females in female sports.
Either or.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm up for it.
All right. Good for you. Well,
These are really obtrusive, by the way. Like, I've got to,
Yeah.
well, that's on purpose. We don't like looking at him.
okay.
Yeah.
That's why we put him there.
This spot is a little, we're
Yeah.
battling. Like, I have one eyeball here.
Yeah. We kind of creep around the corner a little bit. So those of you new to the podcast, we have my wife, Dr. Carrie Hardy, on again. Integrative medicine, naturopathic physician, also BJJ brown belt. Pretty much a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wrist lock aficionado.
Yeah.
She's part of my ilk of wrist lockers.
Wrist locks and ankle locks.
And ankle,
And ankle locks. Small joint manipulation.
On small children.
Yes. That's where we start.
Yeah.
Because they got flexible wrists. So if you can do it to them, you can do it to anybody.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, we invited her and all her talents to talk about weight loss, specifically semaglutide, which is pretty kind of a hot topic recently.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that word tossed around. Don't know what it means. Don't know what it does.
Cool.
Okay.
Don't know if it tastes good. Don't know if it feels good.
By the way, I hope
On the
that
whole, it feels good.
on the whole it feels good.
On the pole?
On the whole.
Oh.
On the whole.
Which
Yep.
hole?
Yep.
Go watch Austin Powers, dude.
Yeah.
So,
Well, before we get started,
okay, I had something too, but go ahead.
you will wait.
Okay.
So, the podcast before last, when we were talking about embarrassing stories,
Ooh.
you little retards.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean,
We're-
retards?
Yeah. We're talking about, me saying something about Chris's testicles.
Did I say something about it?
Yes, you did. It was I was just like, hey, Olivia, let me tell you about Chris's testicles today.
Yeah.
No, you buffoons in the academy were trying to dog my man. And so I had to stand up.
That's true.
And the only other person that's had as much time with his testicles as him is me. So I thought I would just interject. So I just wanted to set that out there.
That's taken out of context, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So-
this is a great kickoff to our new listeners from the Greg Anderson podcast.
There we go.
Well, by the way, it's not work or family safe.
I said testicles. I didn't
Yeah.
say nuts.
And speaking of body parts, the last one we did, I looked at YouTube. It only got half the views of the butt episode. So what does that tell you?
People like the booty.
They do.
They like
apparently.
your booty.
Wow.
It's delicious.
Oh my gosh. I feel like,
Do you feel defiled a little?
yeah. I feel like I'm at the dinner table with my parents right now. And they're talking about each other's buttholes.
You should see where my feet are. Why do you think he's smiling?
Hello.
Oh, man.
So
His
like the
voice
reach.
is a little higher.
a little bit more happy.
Yeah. Also, it is true. Good reach on those legs.
I've been working them toes.
Mind the stepchildren.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Would you like to talk a little bit
I
about?
thought you had something you wanted.
No,
to
I was
bring
just
up.
talking about
Okay.
that last episode wasn't as popular as the butt episode. It was a very profound statement. So.
Well, I had a question, which is, do you have a story of where you had to put your foot in your mouth? Because we had ours.
Oh, I have so many blonde moments.
That's what he said, and he didn't come to the table with anything.
No. So I think one of the most ridiculous things that's ever come out of my mouth was I was a
Besides
grad
him.
student. It's not coming out of my mouth.
At one point it did. Got him.
Oh, dear, Bill.
Sorry.
Your mom watches this.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
So we were working in the chemistry lab, and we were getting ready for some student teaching labs that we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant to say, how long is it on the meter stick? But I said, how long is the meter stick? It's like,
A meter.
okay.
Solid. This is
Yeah.
my doctor
Yep.
right here.
Don't know.
That was when she was a biochem grad student.
Yeah.
I like this.
And that's just one.
It's
That's
called
good.
science.
At some point, we'll tell a couple more. I pretended to be deaf before.
That's so wrong.
I beat the shit out of myself once to avoid catching a charge. So I got some funny ones that we can always talk about.
That
Did you
sounds.
kiss any boys just to get away from someone you didn't want to date?
I mean, the last time I had to do that was a couple weeks ago, and I'm not proud of it.
Okay.
Really, Bill?
All right.
With
What?
who?
Jake.
You know, your wife's in the room, so she's like,
You know,
"Do tell."
Jake just went and got his toes done today.
I
by the
saw
way.
that.
Yeah.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you got centaur boots, you gotta whip out the big guns.
Okay. Okay.
You guys want to talk about fat loss?
Maybe. Yeah. Please rescue us. So,
All right.
Carrie, I'll just kind of set it up. Semaglutide is one of the GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide 1 agonists, meaning it acts on those receptors. It's been these medications based on that have been used here recently with a lot of pretty good success with weight loss and type 2 diabetes. But there's been some things, some controversy and things like that when anything gets popular and people start giving opinions, I wanted Carrie to come in because she's done a deep dive on the research and kind of give us an overview of this stuff.
Is it a medication?
It is a
Yeah,
medication.
go
It's
ahead.
a prescription medication. And its original approval was for type 2 diabetes management. They noticed within that population, those people were losing weight. So then they started studying it for weight loss. And now there's a version of it, Wegovy, which is approved for weight loss, kind of, sort of, depending upon your insurance. But
That's amazing that the insurance dictates if.
you can have it or not. Yeah. And even then, it's still super expensive for people to get. I go through the compounding pharmacy from a reputable compounding pharmacy and get it prescribed for hundreds of dollars cheaper than what people are generally paying for it out of pocket.
Real quick, why is that? How can they do that? How can they do it so much cheaper? Do they add in something so it's like a B vitamin or something?
They have to do a little alteration of it.
Okay, I guess that's my point.
And the other thing is the dosing parameters. So if you can't get it, so the pharmaceutical companies, the way these injectable pens are, the lowest dose you can start at is like 0.25 milligrams, and then you're supposed to double it every week or every 4 weeks. And some people just can't take that kind of a jump as far as dosing.
I see.
And we'll talk about a really interesting case. It's a close friend of ours, and she certainly won't. I won't say her name, but she certainly won't mind me sharing her story of dosing. But we don't want to. In today's society, we're super careful not to fat shame people, not to, everyone's beautiful, you're healthy at whatever size you are. That's not quite true. right? So there's just some diseases that they are finding associated with obesity, which is a body mass index of greater than 30 kilograms per meter squared. That's the definition of obesity. And then severely obese is if you're over 40, if your BMI is over 40. Overweight is between 25 and 29. Otherwise, you're considered normal habitus for body type. But we're concerned about obesity because there's diseases that are just associated with it. Some of the things we can just think of off the top of our head: high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, type 2 diabetes. But then there's a whole host of cancers that are also being associated with being obese, specifically obese, not necessarily overweight. That's meningiomas, so cancers of the brain or the coverings of the brain, cancers of the kidneys, blood cell cancers, the uterus, the ovaries. In postmenopausal women, breast cancer seem to be associated with obesity. So there's the whole host of diseases that come with just being in this inflamed state. And that's what obesity is it's an inflamed state.
Is that BMI that, because I've heard that there's more to it. It's a very...
So, right. And go ahead and get your thing ready. I'm going to quote my book. So I did a thing
Chris
at the
wrote a book.
Yeah. At the end of it, we talked about that very subject. Where is that the best thing to use? You and I, Bill, with our height and weight, would be considered overweight.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Every time I look at that, I'm like, really?
Yeah. So the better measure is waist to height ratio.
Okay.
And that's correlated very well with disease. Right. Where if you just looked at BMI, you could have some people that are carrying more muscle mass and less body fat, but are still heavy, quote unquote, for their height, would be classified as overweight, but are very metabolically healthy and aren't going to see any of those associations. Waist height ratio is very interesting, where you can take, basically, if you do the ratio waist over height and you're over, so if you had, let's say you're 68 inches tall.
Okay.
Okay.
How tall is that?
5'8".
Look at you.
Yeah. And so, and let's say that half of 68 is 34. Okay. So let's say you're 5'8" and you have a 34-inch waist. Okay. That's a 0.5 ratio. And that's kind of the dividing line. Any ratio over 0.5 seems to be associated with increasing risk of all those metabolic disorders and everything Carrie was talking about associated with obesity. Yeah. Lower than 0.5 is more associated with health, and it's a much better correlate than BMI is.
When I was 225-ish,
yep,
I was a 34-inch like waist.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was like right in there. And then now I'm probably like a 29 or something like that.
I don't believe you. I'm going to measure you.
Bring it, son.
Yeah.
You get that strap and put it on my hips.
It's around your
strap on goes.
Well,
supposed to be around your belly button, son.
Well, I'm going off of the like jeans I wear.
No, you can't do that.
Oh.
I'm talking about a tape measure.
Oh no!
Right at your belly button.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I figured you didn't. So,
So dismissive.
I was very dismissive.
Yeah.
But anyway, that to answer your question, that is a better correlate. So if your waist is at half or less than your height, you're heading in the right direction metabolically, typically.
Okay.
That's an easy way of thinking about it.
But in today's medical society, they still go by BMI, and that's how they measure everything. And I mean, and you could just look at someone like, you're not at a proper weight for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with the BMI stuff, because if we went off of where I was supposed to be by what the government said, I'd be a pair of boobs walking around on sticks.
It's a great visual.
I'm just saying.
With no muscle mass
With
or
no,
anything.
no muscle mass. We're just like walking around like.
Hey,
okay,
Carrie,
yeah.
I just had a question about the whole obesity thing.
Mm-hmm.
What normally leads to obesity? Is it usually underlying disease, or is it is it calories?
It's not always calories in, calories out, right? Because there's some of us that just, no matter what we do, we struggle with losing weight. Chris has been an amazing partner, has never once asked me to lose weight. It's always been my own journey to try to get to some place where I felt healthy. But I've always been proper fat since I was a little kid. Like
English proper, when they say proper.
Fat.
I had to lose weight to join the military. It was a struggle for me to keep the weight off. So it's not always just about calories in, calories out. People really like to simplify that. And those are those people that are lucky enough that if they just, I just stopped drinking sodas and now I've lost 20 pounds. And you want to say, F you. Because it's frustrating, for someone who's ever really struggled to lose weight and keep it off. So there are some epigenetic triggers, and that's one of the interesting things that they're hypothesizing about semaglutide. But it can be depression, it can be overeating. There are some health issues where you can put on weight. Adsons can a problem with your adrenal glands can cause weight gain. Cushing syndrome, hypothyroidism can cause you to increase weight, feel more tired, a lot of other things that go with that. And sometimes just correcting the thyroid will do the job, but sometimes not. And then a lot of women, unfortunately, and men, when their testosterone starts getting lower, it gets more challenging for us as we age to keep weight off in general also. So there's a whole host of things that play into that, and it's not just as simple as calories
Poor
in, calories
sleep.
out.
People that aren't sleeping well, high stress, they're not getting restorative sleep. A lot of your, as we talked about in the sleep episodes, a lot of your growth hormone secretions during that deep sleep, which is one of your primary quote unquote fat burning hormones. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff driving it. That's a good question. Yeah. So,
sorry, I was just gonna ask real quick. What do you think has changed though? Like, is there an increase in these types of underlying medical conditions? Because this used to be not as prominent of an issue back in the 60s, the 50s. You see old photos where most people were within that normal waist to height ratio. But now it's become an epidemic.
Right.
Processed food.
Yeah. So
okay.
And it basically.
Stress, processed food, how people are living.
More sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah, since the 2000s, there's been at least, the early 2000s, there has been at least 30% of the population that is considered obese, not overweight, obese.
Now we're at 2/3 of the population is overweight and obese.
Yeah.
2/3 of the population.
Yeah. Dang.
Yep.
So it's an issue, and it's not just in the United States. It's going across the country, and these prepackaged, ready to go foods haven't done us any good. And then we got into a whole, super size. Right. So there's the big gulp, and then you can supersize your fries, and
just go to Cheesecake Factory and order dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not just picking on them, but I mean that's the portions
portions
are
are
ridiculous.
huge,
So.
Right. And you don't realize how much you're actually eating until you get something that starts to control your appetite a little bit, and then you realize, like, I was eating like a fat ass. But that's not the only thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to simplify it. There are people that do struggle and have struggled all their life to lose weight, and it's not just the simple calories in, calories out. Yeah. And this is where I think semaglutide is a little bit different than some of the other weight loss medications in that it's helps on multiple levels for people to kind of take a step back and see, okay, I am eating too many calories. This is what I need to eat to get through my day and feel better. And like I said, they think that the semaglutide is long-term use could potentially change some of those epigenetic triggers to kind of really reset those leptin and ghrelin signaling.
Leptin and ghrelin are appetite hormones. Ghrelin is kind of produced in the stomach, and leptin primarily in the fat cells, believe it or not. And it goes to the brain and helps regulate appetite. So that whole system when people are obese is disrupted significantly. They found that what's sad about it is inflammation seems to be driving things like leptin resistance, just like insulin resistance. So you can be getting the leptin signaling to the brain like, hey, we're good. We have enough food on, fat storage, but the brain's not getting that signal. And so
you just keep eating.
Yeah. So it's this vicious. And then the more you eat, the more the fat cells that are overstuffed with fat become inflammatory. And that's kind of how inflammation starts with obesity.
That cycle of I just overate. Now I feel like a fat turd. I'm going to just lay down for the rest of the day or something until you're hungry again.
And you're hungry, but should you be, right?
Right.
And so that's where that disruption thing, and that's one of the primary things that, and Carrie can tell me if I'm wrong, but these GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide seem to really help kind of interrupt that cycle a bit.
Yeah. So weight loss medications, they've been around for the last 50 years. So we've not been absent of those medications. It's just the first line, the bulk of those medications like phentermine and then other derivatives off that, they're all amphetamines. So they're uppers, and uppers naturally will help suppress your desire to eat. They're anxiolytics, so helping that weight loss suppression.
And you look at the kids that are on like Ritalin or Adderall.
Yeah.
You look at, they have a difficult time. Some of them can kind of stunt their growth, even maintaining proper body mass, because they're just not hungry, because they're amphetamines they're taking basically.
Yeah.
Is fen-phen an amphetamine? I know it comes from an herb though, doesn't it, or like a root? I thought I saw
a lot of our medications come from something in nature. It's just then the pharmaceutical companies have isolated out the exact component that was responsible for that and didn't think about what these other supportive components were doing. And so this is where we really get into a lot of problems. And it's not to say that supplements are all just completely safe. Like, we have to have some due diligence with that as well, because people can certainly get into problems with those, especially if they think more is better. And it's not.
Yeah, but fen-phen's a stimulant as well.
Yeah, it sure is. Other weight loss medications that are pretty popular now, the orlistat, which is a medication to block fat. So people that were basically shitting themselves with little
I think I remember.
fatty. Yeah.
Hold on. What was that brand? What was it called?
Oh.
There was,
I forgot what it was called, but it blocks the uptake of fat in your
you can't have like more
in
than
your
like,
intestine.
10 grams or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
poop your pants.
That's not good.
Yeah. So
have to look that
there's that.
That's a good prank you could put on someone.
Locarcine, which is also an appetite suppressant. A combination of phentermine with an anticonvulsant medication called topiramate. Like, what the hell are we doing there? And then naltrexone and bupropion. Naltrexone is typically used for like drug overdoses to help people with addiction disorders, mostly alcohol. But they've combined that with bupropion, which is an antidepressant to also help with weight loss.
Well, and it's not the dosing of naltrexone. It's not like low dose naltrexone, right? It's the higher dosing, which has a completely different effect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It works at that reward center up in the brain.
Okay.
So, and then other strategies for weight loss that are pretty popular are the bariatric surgeries. And so there's the original one, which is called the Roux-en-Y, which they actually removed a portion of your stomach and then reannexed a portion of it, the small intestines to it, to make it smaller. That tended to give the largest amount of weight loss, but there was about 50% of those where they had to go back for repeat procedures because they didn't achieve the weight loss that they were hoping to. And then there's gastric sleeves, and there's the gastric bands. And those still have patients where they're coming back because they've not achieved weight loss.
Was it because they didn't change their lifestyle?
So it's some of it's changing lifestyle, some of it is still depression, some of it can be a surgical malfunction. I don't want to say it was a mistake, but maybe surgery didn't achieve those goals. So they've gone back in and revised it. The physical inactivity, mental health, right? So still just stuck in depression. And so I say this because all of these are already proven weight loss strategies. And so some of the pushback from semaglutide has been things like, well, you're just going to gain the weight back when you stop it. All of these, even the surgeries, like people, if they didn't learn their lessons from those medications or from that surgery and go back to doing what they were doing before, guess what? You're going to be proper fat again. So, don't just say, oh, well, once you stop the semaglutide, it's all going to come back on.
It's really the same as if you went on Atkins diet, carnivore diet,
any sort of
whatever diet.
If you stop working out,
Yeah.
that just, you know what I mean? That's just a
if you go back to
dumb argument.
Habits you were doing
Yeah.
that got you into that point, proper fat. Then,
This is a tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not like a. Go ahead.
And we are going to talk a little bit more about semaglutide here in just a few minutes. But there's been some pushback as far as the semaglutide that I want to make sure that I put some foundation out there so that people understand that what they think are the downsides of semaglutide aren't just the downsides of that medication only. So when they were looking at other weight loss strategies that really only had something to do with nutritional changes, one of the other big pushbacks about semaglutide has been the fact that, people aren't really losing fat, they're losing lean body mass too. Like, okay. So there's this great paper, and Chris has it over there in the pile, and they looked at 5 different nutritional changes to help with weight loss. The very low caloric intake, so really like restricting feeding, how much is going in. About 75% of all weight loss was fat, but then you're still losing 25% of lean muscle mass. Low carb was 76% fat and 24% lean muscle mass. Low fat diet was 76% fat loss with 24% lean muscle mass loss. High protein was 89% fat loss and 11% lean muscle. And then high fiber was the 75 and 25 ratio of fat to lean muscle. So there's nothing that's going to say that you're not going to lose a little bit of lean muscle mass. But guess what? There's ways to offset that, but I don't know. Eating fucking protein and working out, right? Like there's ways to offset that.
Giving that anabolic stimulus to keep because muscle's an expensive tissue. And if you're not using it and, loading it and you start doing caloric restriction by whatever means, your body's going to be like, well, we don't need all of that, so of course that's going to happen.
Yeah. But, we had one of our friends that, their partner, they were concerned about their partner because they heard something on another podcast about, she's just going to lose lean body mass. I'm like, if she eats protein and work out, she's going to be fine.
Yeah. Like any other type of weight loss.
Yeah. So we don't want to just find all of the negative things to put on this new darling of weight loss, and act like it's not been in other places already. Yeah. So now, what is semaglutide? So Chris already mentioned it's a GLP-1 agonist. So it binds to that receptor and helps to modulate things like appetite, helps modulate leptin and ghrelin. And those receptors are found in a large number of places throughout the GI system, the heart, the brain, the lungs, and the kidneys as well. So if we can imagine that this medication may have beneficial effects in multiple places other than just weight loss, and in addition to the benefits that you get with weight loss. So like I said, there was a story, and I haven't, this wasn't something that I was able to verify, that semaglutide was originally being studied for Alzheimer's dementia. And I haven't found any of that original work, and I don't think that ever got published. But if that's true, I believe they are looking at that again now, though, as part of a treatment because of the because of the binding sites for that GLP-1 up in the brain. So what it can help with, it improves the beta cells, so the cells in the pancreas that can help with insulin regulation. It also helps with glucose uptake within the muscles, so getting that sugar out of the blood system and putting it into those reserves in the muscles for when they're needed. It reduces large intestine motility, which is a little bit of a double-edged sword, but that's also what helps keep you feeling fuller longer if food isn't moving through the system as quickly. Reduces the appetite through those serotonin receptors and through leptin and ghrelin. It's cardioprotective, and there are some new studies out on that. And they're also, like I said, they're looking at it for those neurodegenerative disorders.
So, Carrie, can I interject on that? It makes sense because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that at the genetic level, some of these GLP-1 agonists actually stimulate gene expression for some of the anti-inflammatory. Mm-hmm. So it basically is stimulating an anti-inflammatory effect systemically too. So it would make sense for diseases of inflammation.
Yeah.
That it would help, especially the cardioprotective type stuff.
The first GLP-1 agonist was liraglutide, and that's been out for a while. And it had some positive effects. Then they did a derivative of it, the semaglutide, and that has even better weight loss effects. And now there's a brand new one out that's also the terzepatide. I believe that's how it's said. That is also seems to be, of the three, the best for weight loss. I've not actually prescribed that yet, but it's still a medication that's useful for people if we're having problems losing weight.
Yeah. Sorry.
Why'd you side-eye him like that?
You move that mic away when you're sucking that thing down.
I don't know. It adds to the ambience.
Gosh. I hear it going down your gullet.
So the dosing for the semaglutide, it's a once a week injection. I prefer the injections. There are some oral forms. I'm a little concerned about some of the breakdown products of the oral forms. And I guess that's the biggest thing for people to kind of get over is like, oh, I got to inject myself. I'm like, yeah, you do, but it's not a big deal. Just, nut up and let's do it.
It's subcutaneous, right?
It's subcutaneous. Yeah. It's a small needle, but it's still a needle, right?
Sure.
And then every 4 weeks you increase the dose. I typically start lower than where the pharmaceutical companies go as far as dosing. And then slowly ramp people up. The semaglutide, the primary side effect from that is nausea. You can have some heartburn. You can get a little constipation. If you dose too much too high, you're not going to be happy.
Like in what way?
So I had one of my patients, she was having a rough day. She didn't really read the label. She injected 10 times as much as she was supposed to. Oh. Nausea, vomiting, heartburn for a full week.
But she lost some weight.
She did. She did. But it was not fun. Yeah. It's not fun. So that's the primary side effects of the semaglutide is the nausea, the heartburn. Usually is typically really well taken care of by, I like having a couple ginger chews or some ginger tea. Some people are throwing in a little proton pump inhibitor, I almost called it Ozempic.
Prilosec or Prevacid or
omeprazole. That's what I was thinking of. And so they're using those. I'd rather try something natural first.
Is it typically the worst part of that side effect profile for semaglutide is this potential nausea or something like that?
That's the most common side effects. Okay. There is a black box warning when you go on some of the medications for the oral forms of the GLP-1 agonists that if you already have a history of thyroid cancer, can cause thyroid cancer. And I believe that was only studied in rodents, but I'd have to look at that again. And there's just some of these rodent studies can be helpful, but there's newer information coming out about research rodents and, The fact that they tend to get cancers quicker, more readily than we would naturally see in like wild type rodents or humans. So I don't want to dismiss that, but this medication can be used very safely.
And that's the oral form,
That's
not the injectable forms
oral
associated
form,
with that. Okay.
And then they're doing a study now in the type 2 diabetics. There was concern about retinal health, but the studies thus far are showing that those retinal changes were most likely there before they started that medication and are unchanged while they're on the semaglutide.
And backing up a little bit on can you use something like DGL or something like that for the?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the deglycerinized licorice.
Yeah. So the licorice root, the deglycerizoform, slippery elm, like any of that can be helpful. It's kind of hard to carry that around. The DGL chews are fine.
Yeah, DGL chews are okay.
Ginger works perfectly well.
Okay.
Yeah. And most people do well with that. It's just worked. It's worked.
Yeah. So is there... So we briefly mentioned that when someone comes off this, like a lot of people worry, you're just going to gain the weight back or something like that. And we've identified that typically that is going to be because they haven't changed any lifestyle. They relied on this quote unquote medication or super pill or something to help them lose weight. They lost some, but they didn't change anything. So when they get off of that, it's right back.
It's going to come back on, and probably more, like most of these other things. Like once you stop this, when people gain weight back, they typically get to where they were before and then some. So
is there any possibility of it not just being a lifestyle thing? So let's say they did change some lifestyle stuff. They eat better, that they have some regular, whether it's intensive exercise or just low level, depending on their fitness level and all that. When they come off of it, is there a chance that they would gain some weight back?
They should gain a little bit, but it shouldn't be back to the point where they were before, right?
But it should be expected that, you might put on a couple pounds.
Pounds. Like I wouldn't expect more than 5, right? But if you're doing the right things, that shouldn't vary much, 2 of my patients have done some really wonderful things without going down routes of medication for their weight loss. And it's been a long, slow journey for them. I have one of my patients, she's already lost over 100 pounds, and she's just doing ketogenic, right? Yeah. And now that she's got some weight off, she's able to get into the pool and move better and feel better. And she's just happy, right? Yeah. And she still has a ways to go. But it can be done naturally, but she's also doing those lifestyle pieces to keep that momentum going.
And once you lose the weight, maintenance is so much easier than the journey of getting to a desired, we've talked about before, is composition's more important than weight, but obviously a lot of people they have a number typically, and I get that for goal reasons, but at some point composition should probably come into play. But where once they get there, it's so much easier to maintain. The journey can be really tough, but once you're there, I'm a testament to that. I can have 4 cookies after jiu-jitsu and
today,
literally. And I had some chocolate pudding as well when I got home. But I'm not going to blow up. Right. And it's not because I have routine and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to spiral. Yeah. Which happened a lot previously when I would try.
I just like looking at your face when you said chocolate pudding. You had the whole thing just lit up a little bit. Yeah.
It did. It's like, I know it's very like similar to when you see like Nikita changing his pants and you walk in on him. Similar expression.
Did you have a similar expression?
Yeah. My face was glowing when I talk about pudding. Yours is glowing when you see Nikita's butt.
What? Where's he getting this stuff?
I don't know what you two are fucking doing.
I don't know. I know, we're out of control. He apparently is kissing guys somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
what's
It's
going
better
on.
than kissing pickles like you, buddy.
Oh my. Okay. So the semaglutide, so speaking of having, like long-term weight loss,
Yeah.
there's some people, so full disclosure, when somebody asked me about it, I'm like, okay, I'll prescribe it. I don't know much about it.
When this first came.
When it first came out. And so last summer, like around this time last year, like July.
Oh, it's really new.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I started injecting myself. I'm down about 20 pounds, and it's probably something that I'll just continue to do just because of my family history of heart disease, diabetes,
And it has
dementias.
these good inflammation properties to it.
Yeah.
So,
and it's something that I'm not necessarily doing every week. So although, ideally I'd like to lose maybe another 5 pounds, it's not crucial because I'm good if I never lost anything else. But clearly my body hasn't learned those lessons yet either, because I can feel some of my old habits creep back in. Like, oh, I could eat a little more of that.
right.
Right. And so then it's like, okay, do I need to inject every other week? Do I just need to inject once a month? I eventually, hopefully, will come off of it. But if I don't, I think that there's good safety standards for it being long-term use. And God, when I was going through the research for this, for us to get ready for today, I didn't realize the number of trials that have been done on this. There's like 7 or 8 different trials. There's like the SUSTAIN trial, and then there's like 5 different SUSTAIN trials. There's the PIONEER trial. There's all these different trials that people are doing with semaglutide specifically, that it makes me wonder what they're hoping to find, maybe to discredit it, just because of all of the ongoing trials that have been done with it. But there's recently a new study that came out about just the safety profile of it in general and its chronic use. And so it's looking very favorable that this is something we can use long-term and safely.
Well, let me ask you about long-term use. Would maybe a goal of that would be to drive maybe eventually those epigenetic changes?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be kind of the idea, right? So then we can not have, and those of you remember what epigenetics are, Bill?
Yeah.
Turning on and off gene expression, basically. It's not changing your DNA. It's changing what genes are expressed and when.
Is that part of the stuff that gets passed down?
It can.
Through history.
We talked about the Holocaust survivors where they have an exaggerated stress response up to like 3 generations afterwards. Yeah.
And typically, like that's the thought on animals when they know, like, they're freaked out by snakes or something but not rabbits.
Yeah. Kind of epigenetic. So the idea would be, if someone is, let's say, someone with a family history like Carrie, kind of maybe there was some maternal malnutrition, right, when she was, in utero, or then, when she's very small, that initial, those epigenetics are set for stress response and holding on to calories and, survival, basically, right?
Right.
And it might take a long time to kind of reverse those. So that might be an interesting thing to study for long-term use, those changes.
So is the epigenetics thing similar to, like, for example, we know just by looking at you that your mom drank and smoked cigarettes while you were in the womb?
She may very well have.
A lot.
I mean,
more than normal.
Probably for my brother especially. Just he's squirrely as hell looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you got the short end of the stick, right?
I literally did.
And
I'm actually the shortest person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wasn't your dad...
My dad's short too, but my brother's like over 6, or he's at least 6 feet tall.
Yeah, just looks down on you.
Yeah.
So is that part of epigenetics too? Like the alcohol fetal syndrome and stuff that you got?
No, that's actually directly toxicological. That's that's not
just
good.
made
That
up
I
a
have. That I have that. You think
Okay, Bill.
He's brought this up before. Thinks I have fetal alcohol syndrome.
I mean, I'm saying you got past it. Like you defeated it.
Isn't that where they have a smaller head?
Yes, I want you to look
Yeah.
that up next time.
Look at his
microcephaly and
And they have a lot of behavioral issues too.
Yeah.
Be careful what stone you throw in your large glass house.
You let your wife fight your
I
battles.
got
Shut
a
up.
bunch of questions. I don't know if you're ready for questions.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. How long does the compounded medication generally last? Like how long does it take for someone to go through like a vial?
So the dosing for the semaglutide, like I said, I start off a little bit lower than what the traditional pharmaceutical companies, like the Ozempic, you'd get it like a Bartell's or a Rite Aid, right? And so I order in the 5 ml vials for each person. And depending upon where their dose is, that vial will either last 5 weeks, could last 10 weeks. A friend of ours who actually, I started her off at the initial 2 milligram dose or 0.2 milligram dose. She had horrible nausea and vomiting for an entire week. And so we had to wait 2 weeks and then cut that actually in half. And so I think her first vial lasted her like 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or 4 months.
And substantially cheaper.
Yeah. And so the dosing for everyone with which they are going to achieve weight loss is a little bit different. For most people, it tends to be somewhere around the 1 to 2 milligram dose range. And so depending upon where you are, depends on how quickly you go through that vial.
Okay. Is there any contraindications for this medication? Like things like you shouldn't be taking, like basic kind of things, like, I don't know, like Lipitor or I don't know.
No. As far as medications, no.
Yeah.
If you have an eye issue, I make sure that my patients get an eye exam first, and I see that note from the eye doctor that says they're all good. If you have an underlying thyroid cancer or had a history of it, again, I won't prescribe that. Even though those studies were for the oral forms, I still won't do it just out of an abundance of caution.
Okay. How much? Okay. Let's say someone's like, I just want to lose 5 pounds.
This is not the medication for you.
That's what I'm wondering. It's like, how much would someone need to be needing to lose for them to qualify to take something like this?
I at least want them in the upper overweight range. So that 28, 29 BMI, definitely the 30 and above. I think they benefit. That obese category is where they start to benefit.
Okay. What's the difference between semaglutide and dulaglutide?
They're still GLP-1 agonists, and so some of them are long-acting. I think the dulaglutide is a short-acting, so you have to do it more frequently.
Okay, so they work the same. They're just
how long they last, right? So the semaglutide being long-acting, you only need to do it once a week.
Well, to that point, GLP-1 itself, which these are based on, has a very short half-life. That's why they don't use it therapeutically, because it just doesn't last long in the bloodstream. What?
No. Bill was moving my monitor.
Well, it's because you were mainly talking to her, so your
I like her.
was getting way over there.
Okay.
and then
so the camera can't see you. That's why he was doing that.
No, because it was getting too soft.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
She was projecting that way.
Yeah.
Is this acting on insulin in a way, like pushing you to create more insulin?
It's helping those beta cells work better. Yes.
Okay, so like if someone went and got their blood tested and they looked at their insulin, I don't know what it could be higher then because of
insulin shouldn't be higher by you taking the GLP-1 agonist.
Okay.
Your glucose number should be lower because insulin is working better. But these medications, they're definitely appetite suppressants. Mm-hmm. So, and also there's something really weird that I haven't seen that I've at least noticed, and I've heard a couple of other anecdotal stories where, like, the desire for sweet things, like there was a chocolate Chris and I were both eating, and then I'm like, I can't eat this anymore. It's entirely too sweet.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually in one of these papers called the hedonic response of food, hedonism. Like Bill is the poster boy for the hedonic response of food. The way he talks about it, and it's like, oh, you know, that
It's a quiet, reflective moment.
Yeah, exactly. But that seems to be very blunted by this too. So you might not really just be like, oh, I'm gonna tear up that chocolate.
So maybe
chip
I should
cookie.
get on this because it'll.
No, Bill.
No, you shouldn't. If you become a
psycho.
fat, more so perhaps.
What?
If you become a fatty again, you might. I don't know.
But
You don't need it, but it's another thing, right? So it's not working.
It changes your desire.
It changes your desire for those
sweet stuff.
Yeah, those hedonistic type foods. One of our another patient of mine was out having some wine with some family, and they're like, the wine was gross. I normally like it. I thought it was just me. I'm like, nope, it's the semaglutide.
They had a nice oaky afterbirth.
Afterbirth.
Oaky.
Afterbirth.
Afterbirth.
Yeah. How much afterbirth have you had?
Are you a sommelier of
Too
afterbirth?
Both of you mind your business.
Okay.
And then
Like Jeffrey Dahmer over here.
you know how, like, a lot of times, like, they talk about how when you consume too few of calories, it can cause your body to go into a survival mode where you stop losing weight. Since this is an appetite suppressant, does it circumvent that to where your body thinks like it's good and it doesn't do that then?
So you will reach a plateau where you're not going to lose any more weight by just relying on the things that you're currently doing, right? So, like, I guess if I wanted to lose that other 5 pounds, I'd need to find some way to get in and do a little bit more aerobic exercise in, right? So yes, you're not gonna go into that, okay, I need to hold on to these calories, but because it is an appetite suppressant, you do need to make sure that you eat. So when I've heard various physicians talk about semaglutides and using them for weight loss, things that people that are doing it well and not just trying to make a buck, that they're emphasizing is that you still make sure that you have to eat. So it's okay to, like, intermittent fast. But then at lunchtime, like, you need to go ahead and break your fast. And you need to have some protein, right? These medications will definitely stop you from overeating. Because if you eat too much, you're going to feel like shit. And so, like, when we were getting the larger steaks, like, I could only have maybe a third of the steak that I would normally have eaten before, right? So you need to prioritize what you're eating first, right? So eat your proteins first, then your vegetables. If you're still hungry, then you can have your starch and carbohydrates, right?
Yeah, and if you look back at earlier in the episode today, Carrie talked about those different diets and the protein, muscle mass versus fat loss. The high protein diet had much less muscle loss, if you noticed.
Only 11%.
Because we're hitting the mTOR pathway, the anabolic pathway with that.
On the early episode, or our really early episodes, we had Brittany on. And didn't we identify once she did a food journal that she wasn't eating enough? I thought that was something that through her journey.
I thought at the time, based on her training, she wasn't feeding her training well. I mean, if she wasn't training, she was eating plenty.
Yeah. And then, but there was also like some of the, I don't know if process is the right word, but there was the protein bars and like shakes and stuff rather than
consumption.
heartier foods.
Yeah.
So that's another potential pitfall that can kind of stunt or put you at a plateau, right?
For sure.
I mean, I think that's, well, I mean, okay. I do have one more thing. So
We're living.
Okay, it's just weird timing, and I already told Chris about this.
Okay.
But there were some people, there was a gal's video on YouTube that popped up, and she had taken Ozempic, but it was, her doctor had it compounded. And apparently she has a history of colitis, and I guess it caused like bad diarrhea for her on like the lowest level. Or, and then also some like anxiety and depression issues. Have you heard of that before?
The anxiety piece I've heard of, not the depression or the diarrhea.
Okay.
I've heard more of the constipation because it slows that gastric motility. She may need something different, right? And I don't know what dose they started her off at.
Yeah.
But that's not a typical
reaction.
Yeah, especially if you look at the proposed mechanisms of action, the anti-inflammatory component, especially in the brain, depression and anxiety is partly driven by neuroinflammation in the brain. And so you would think that, by reducing some of that, it actually would help.
You would, yeah. And then obviously that whole gut-brain connection, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
We have a little bit of a leaky gut from the colitis that's that's driving that piece.
That's what I told Olivia that I thought probably was going on with that kind of pre-existing thing was just kind of exacerbated.
Yeah.
Like maybe they have a really jacked up gut and it's causing all sorts of havoc.
And they probably need to do something different to help heal that first
before
they got to.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the semaglutide thing, it's not male, female. Like you can apply it to either, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like anybody can use it, right?
Okay.
I've got a handful of guys that are on it. More females, right? In society, we're just more driven to be concerned about our weight in general. But I do have a handful of guys that I'm prescribing it for also.
Yeah.
But we've also talked about other things like optimizing hormones, optimizing sleep. Like those foundational pieces are still there and they still have to be addressed. And we can't just hand out a medication like it's a Band-Aid. Yeah. But those people that need to lose just 5-10 pounds, like go work, stop eating. You know what I mean?
Nikita.
Like that's not, this isn't the inappropriate use for that. Right. And so this is where we start getting into, those I could see it becoming something like the testosterone clinics, right? Where next thing you know, everybody Jim, Joe, and Jack is opening up their little weight loss clinic and they're prescribing semaglutide, sending people on their way without doing the due diligence of, finding out what else is going on with their patients and
much less a good history and physical exam on someone.
Right. And find underlying things, like, okay, you tell me you're eating well, but when I look at your insulin numbers, they're in the 20s. Well, something's off. Let's talk. Like, are you drinking? What's sleep like? Like, you got to still have those foundational conversations, and those still have to be part of the treatment.
I did have one more question. Since it is an anti-diabetic medication, for someone who maybe is pre-diabetic or diabetic range and start this, or maybe they didn't know that, or they're showing some sort of insulin resistance, is it like long? I guess how long would you have to take it? You don't know.
Depends.
Yeah. And it
depends. So
is it losing the fat that's going to end up helping you to reduce the insulin resistance, or is it just the mechanism in which it's working in your body?
Yeah, so
you mean the semaglutide?
Yeah.
So the semaglutide does have an effect at that at those beta cells within the pancreas. So it is helping in that fashion. And it's helping to move glucose out of the bloodstream and into the muscles, right?
So it is a sensitizer a bit, but to your point, Olivia, the less fat cells you have driving inflammatory responses, because that will drive insulin resistance as well too. So you're getting kind of both. As you lose weight, you're getting less inflammation, and that is helping at the insulin receptor as well too.
Yeah.
So both.
Does semaglutide have any sort of anabolic effect at all?
No.
Okay, just curious.
Getting jacked.
Get jacked on semaglutide.
If you have someone come in and they're at that, I got about 20 to 25 pounds I want to drop.
Mm-hmm.
What's your go-to? What are you saying to them? What questions are you asking them to get them started? And this is a question for both of you. And Chris, don't copy her completely. Bring something to the table when she's done. Miss Dr. Hardy.
So as most people, well, I shouldn't say most people know, people that come in to see me, that initial appointment is an hour long. Mm-hmm. We get into the weeds, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about sleep, we're talking about nutrition, we're talking about stress. Like, we're going through it because all those pieces are important. And so if they are in a place where they have to lose like 20, 25 pounds, like, have you been this heavy before? What's worked for you in the past? What can I optimize for them to help them try to lose weight? Nutrition and sleep, always the two foundational things that we have to correct. Then we can start layering on, like, okay, we can try some semaglutide, or we can try some acupuncture if stress is particularly a component of it. Like, I had one of my patients, she's just a little stress ball. Once she started getting acupuncture, the rest of her picture came into place, and exercise and nutrition were working well, and she was losing weight.
Do you think the part of that is just doing something that is kind of connected to a healthy living and healthy lifestyle? Like starting to do the acupuncture thing, and so it puts you in an environment that where you care about your health and wellness. And
so my one patient where she's already lost over 100 pounds, and this is just her doing ketogenic stuff, right? Yeah. So, and then she got to a point where she felt like she could exercise, and so now
which ketogenic stuff, when you say that, clean, for the most part, cleaner foods.
She's eating proteins, vegetables, healthy fats.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Occasionally, like for Thanksgiving, she had a little bit of starch, right? But then she jumped right back on the wagon and was doing all of the right things again.
Most of the carbs come from whether it's veggies or fruits.
She's not even really doing fruits.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's still feeding her activity level.
Yeah.
Right? So she's not out busting a half marathon every week, right? But she's moving. And just walking is huge.
Okay.
And so, we've gotten her off her diabetes medication.
Yeah.
She's super excited. She wants to now do something in nutrition to help people with their journey, right? So it doesn't have to be a fancy medication.
Yeah.
This medication is quicker, for sure, but definitely the way she's doing it, as long as she sticks with that, it's going to be sustainable.
Because it just goes back to the beginning. Yes, the medication can help accomplish things sooner, but as soon as you're off it, if you didn't change these other things, you're right back, or if not worse.
Exactly.
And I guess I just wanted to clarify, for some people might not know what, like when you say she's just eating ketogenic, is like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah. So for her, because there's kind of two basic forms of ketogenic, right? I think the traditional was much more like fat heavy. That gets to be a little disgusting sometimes.
A little rough on the GI tract.
Like what?
Right.
What would that look like?
Like the higher percentile of your calories is coming more from fat.
Like what kind of foods?
Nuts, olive oils,
cheese,
throwing butter in your coffee, like
just
all those things,
MCT
right?
Oil.
Yeah, exactly. Just to kind of get.
Okay.
But for her, we made it more protein centered, and that was much more doable for her, and she felt better on it.
So it kind of almost starts to go into that quasi carnivore, where you're like 75% proteins, probably animal proteins, and then got some other stuff in there.
Yeah. And she wasn't running around hungry. We weren't starving her. She was doing some intermittent fasting, but she wasn't starving herself. You know what I mean?
When you say intermittent fasting, it's like because I technically do it, but I don't even try because just that from the time that I eat dinner, and then by the time I typically don't eat breakfast. Sometimes if I'm had a hard training, then I might do like I think those.
Where you have coffee.
Yeah, I do have coffee. The flax muffin and a banana. If like I feel like I want to have something in the morning, like I can tell my body needs it. But if I don't, then I train in at 11, and then eat after health.
Yeah, but for some of us, we were very much raised in the here's breakfast, here's lunch, here's dinner. And then they're throwing snacks in, and then there's desserts. And so next thing you know, you're just consuming more perhaps than you really think you need to.
Yeah. And that's where that honest evaluation that you were talking about of what's your sleep, what's the nutrition look like, and it has to be an honest evaluation.
Exactly.
As in like, you think you're sleeping good, but are you getting like you're actually going to bed at midnight or 11:30 while you're on your phone in bed? Like,
How dare you?
what? No, I'm just saying. Like some people that think that they have a great sleep pattern, but then like we're fortunate we can get up kind of when we want, rather than these people they have to get to work by 8 a.m. So they're not able to, if they feel like they need to sleep in a little bit longer, then they can.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to copy Carrie, but
Let's hope not.
So what I actually made my patients do is give me a food and activity log. So for a week or two, they have to write down everything that goes in their mouth and what time, and then what they do for exercise. Because sometimes I've had patients that they're eating pretty well, but for instance, they're like, oh, well, I'm not eating that many carbohydrates. Some people have no problems with carbohydrates. Yeah. But if you have a lot of people that have weight issues do. Mm-hmm. And so a couple patients, I just moved their carbohydrate till after their workout. We just shuffled things around, and all of a sudden they started losing weight, right? That whole feed your activity thing. And so that's where a food log can be very important, and it's very instructive. You're like, oh crap, I'm freaking.
And what that does
I don't realize how much I'm actually intaking. Yeah. Even the little things like, oh, I just had a couple macadamia nuts here. And then you look at it on a day, you're like, oh.
I feel like no one eats just a couple macadamia nuts.
Well, of course not. Especially the salted ones, man. Huge. They're freaking amazing.
Have you ever eaten too many?
It's
not good.
That's not fun.
That about you in the old booty.
Yeah. It's not good. So, so that's some accountability there, I think, is important too. And it's instructive too. And I think the semaglutide really is an instructive type of drug where over time you get into a pattern of like, well, this is how much I eat. Yeah. And even off of it, you can be like, you're like, oh no, this is really what I need. It's almost like
that nutrient timing stuff though, feeding your activity and all that. It's super underrated. I think that it's something that helped me a lot to where, when I've said it before, but when I would not eat like garbage unless it was like I trained in the midday, and then my lunch I could have some and not feel that bad and train that night. Or if I didn't train in the midday, then I would consciously be like, I'm gonna crush an ice cream sandwich tonight, and maybe
after training.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just made sure it was after training.
Right.
A couple beers after training.
That's right.
Right. And it's shocking how just restricting yourself that much, because I was still losing weight and sometimes I would eat like fast food. But because I was doing it at the right times.
Yeah, you're clearing that muscle glycogen. This is big now. You're like, look, I have all this room to store that extra sugar,
so
right?
I think it makes that weight loss journey, if someone really is struggling with the whole like...
And everything else is dialed in though first. That's like top
of course.
pyramid.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's like if there's people that are struggling with, they've tried every diet and they failed every single time because they're trying to like go all in and change their whole lifestyle on the drop of a dime. Yeah, it's like, well, this is a good way to introduce limiting. If you eat McDonald's, whatever your bugaboo is, the thing that kind of.
You're gonna say bugaboo.
That's not a bad word.
It is.
Okay. Whatever the thing that kind of knocks you down. When you tried these other things, it's like you can still have that stuff just in the beginning, but just do it at the right time. And in time, you'll find that you know what? I don't actually need to eat that burger after. I'll just have some white rice and ground beef. Mm-hmm. And now you're on the journey of actually eating cleaner. What's up?
I got a question.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to talk some trash.
No, but I do. Okay. So you know how everything, like all of our nutrition on nutrition labels is always based off of a 2,000 calorie diet? Mm-hmm. What really, for the average, I know it's going to be different. Everybody's different, but typically, like, what is the range that people should be consuming of calories?
It depends on their.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's just say normal Joe Schmo.
Do they work out at all?
They do moderate activity 3 times a week.
What kind
but they sit at a desk all day.
Yeah, but what kind of activity?
Like they're on the treadmill and they walk to jog.
So no like
miles.
anaerobic thing or anything like
Maybe
that,
light
right?
lifting, light weightlifting.
Okay. They get a couple of these jobbies in.
Yeah, they're not doing like super heavy. They're not doing high rep.
You know, I've really stayed away from prescribing calories. I really have. Because if you get into...
It's neurotic.
And if you start counting them, yeah, it gets crazy. You feel like then you have a very unhealthy relationship with food. I think being able to spontaneously eat to satiety to kind of fix those mechanisms, which is what this is kind of helping with, the semaglutide. But there's no like, the worst thing I've seen with these other quote unquote lifestyle medicine clinics, they're like, you need to be on a 1,800 calorie or whatever. They specify this and have these poor people counting all their food and stuff like that.
Punishment or reward and like.
Yeah, it just puts then they're like, oh, I get to eat, like
Twinkies.
Here's my reward. That's
my one candy bar for the week.
Or they'll just start, and then you can only sustain that for so long,
right?
And people are gonna be like, screw this.
And that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, I feel like it sets you up if you're gonna have that whole thing where I can only do 1,800 calories, and then but I get my one cheat day. Like I hate the whole cheat day thing.
That's ridiculous.
Well, and also,
Carrie's gonna blow
Carrie's
me
gonna
up.
say real quick. I feel like a lot of times too with like that whole if it fits your macros thing, it causes people to actually go out and pick these horrible products because it's sugar free, so I'm not going to get my carbs, but I can get my fat or whatever out of this product, and so they're ending up consuming more processed things, even though it helps them quote lose weight because they're within a certain calorie range.
It's really pretty simple. As far as the foundations, eat real food as much as possible. I mean, as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, the other stuff. I mean, I've talked several times about these fast food places and the people that manufacture them have a whole staff full of flavorists. They're chemists that basically find compounds to stimulate the reward system in the brain. Mm-hmm. Why do people crave certain things? Like I want a McDonald's this, or Coke sucks and Pepsi is amazing, or yes,
Amen.
They're hitting that reward system in the brain. They're hijacking it. Yeah. So anyway,
you were gonna ridicule me on something I said.
Not ridicule you, but when I talk to my patients about nutritional changes, making sure that they understand, like, okay, if it's date night for like you and Liv, and we're talking about nutritional changes, you know what? Go have the pizza, go have the beer, do whatever, right? But then the rest of the time you need pretty doggone good, right? Yeah. And that's where a lot of these diets, because like you said, they go in and they clean it all up, but they don't allow themselves to still enjoy some of the things they enjoy.
Yeah.
And then the whole cheat day, right? It really shouldn't be a cheat day, right? If we're doing these nutritional changes, because then they're piling up like, well, I'm going to have a muffin for breakfast. I'm going to have a burger for lunch. I'm going to have a pizza for dinner. And then I'm going to have a whole bowl of ice cream, right? Yeah. And so, like, then what did you do the entire week? You know what I mean? Yeah. So if we're going to be a glutton on our cheat day, then just don't even fucking bother.
Right.
Like a cheat meal, maybe, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
and even then, do it at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
after training. Yeah.
If you're truly like on a legit journey, you want like results. It's like you can have that delicious quote unquote stuff Just do it at the right time.
And exercise doesn't necessarily have to be, we all practice jujitsu and we do some strength training stuff, but that doesn't have to be like, if you're just getting started down this pathway, just get out and fucking walk. Walk, but walk at a pace, not where we're pointing out the little flowers and the little bunnies and the little bees, walking to a pace where you can't really hold a conversation comfortably. And do it in the fasted state, right? And then what's
that doing by doing it in a fasted state?
It's starting to ramp up that metabolism a bit more.
Yeah. So the idea of fasted cardio, you want to stay out of the anaerobic zone as far as intensity goes. The idea behind that is, let's say I've been fasting all night. And I get up first thing in the morning. I don't eat. I go on like do a low level, long term cardio, like they call zone 2 or whatever you want to call it. But to that level where we're not burning a whole lot of blood glucose, we're mobilizing fat stores for our energy. You're keeping, because you're already mobilizing fat stores during the fast, and it's kind of just keeping that going. What's
the detriment of doing higher level workout or zone 4? I don't know what.
Well, like you're getting into anaerobic territory, you'll probably kind of bonk a little bit.
What does that mean?
In other words, it'd be like if I came in and I was just doing no carbs and I came in and think I'm going to do 2 hours of jujitsu. Yeah, I have very little muscle glycogen to support anaerobic activity, because anaerobic, by definition, without oxygen, you cannot utilize fat as an energy source. You're having to burn sugar. I was saying the point is you've already mobilized fat stores for energy during the night, and doing some low level cardio will just kind of pull more of that, keeping that going. Okay. Right. It will preferentially burn more. If you look at a proportion, nothing is all or none. Yeah. But it will burn more because fat is a much more high efficient fuel to use than glucose is, as far as long-term low-level cardio. I'm not saying you're not burning any glucose, right? But you're not going anaerobic, which stops you from utilizing fat. Does that make sense? Yeah. As an energy source.
I thought, okay, and obviously I had this completely wrong. So after you work out and you do a refeed, so you're filling those muscles back up with
So this is after a hard work.
If you've done anaerobic where you're burning significant amount of glycogen. Okay,
so we do jujitsu, we come home, we refeed with some starches, candy bar or whatever. And through the night, our body is releasing that glycogen. I thought the glycogen can only come out of the muscle. So wouldn't the glycogen then be there for you to do an anaerobic exercise?
No, in that state. So in other words, if you did your refeed, right, and you're already topped off. I'm saying the average. I'm just saying.
Oh, the abnormal person.
Yeah. So let's say that you. No, that's a good point.
Okay, I was just curious. I was like, wait, hold on.
No, and it's also you're shutting off the ability to burn fat into the anaerobic zone, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. No. But people tend to do a walk in the morning. I'm just saying it can be a very beneficial thing.
Right. Yeah. But if we're focusing on fat loss, then you don't necessarily have to go out and kill it in the gym, right? You can do something as simple as put your shoes on and go for a good walk.
Guys, there's a difference between performance and they diverge, right?
Is there a time to work out that's best? We've talked about circadian rhythm stuff.
Through the circadian rhythm, there seems to be, for performance,
fat loss, like someone
that's a good question. I would say that you probably
whatever you can be consistent with.
Whatever you can be consistent with, but I think that low level cardio fasted state is pretty legit. Yeah. Right. So or especially, and if you can get a cold plunge in the morning too.
Easy on that.
But then you're just up in your norepi and epi, right? You're mobilizing fat stores from that too.
I'll wear my pink hat.
So, but performance-wise, it seems to be kind of mid-late afternoon for the circadian rhythm for most people for optimum performance.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, that heavy, strong pace walk where it's a little difficult to really maintain a full conversation.
Exactly.
Not getting into like a jog necessarily.
Nope. Don't even have to do that.
Yeah. Would that go for some? Because we have someone at the gym that has actually lost a little bit of weight. They're 182 now. They were considering trying to get to the 168-pound division,
which really means going down to 164,
right?
Because the gi weight.
Yeah, and then doing an extreme workout, essentially, if you're competing, right? You're going to potentially have 5 matches, 6, 7, 8, who knows?
If it's the person I think we're talking about, whose children were in today, I think that's probably too lean for him.
That's what I was going to say. It would be different if someone had like a significant amount of body fat at 182.
So, and I think,
right.
And I think so to bring that scenario maybe a little more broader is he's down to 182. So in our divisions, we have 181 with the gi. Okay. So he still has some weight to lose to even make that.
Yeah. Like 177 or so.
Yeah. But he looks at like guys like Chris and I, and he's like, oh, how are we all the same size? Like, or same
weight?
Weight division, right? I'm fairly lean. Chris has more muscle than him. So he's kind of like, should I not even be at this division? Because I see you guys in the 181 division. What the heck?
But I'm not. I'm 185 pounds right now.
Right.
And so I want to get back down. So I'm hovering around 177, 178. I feel better, a little leaner.
Yeah.
But for someone like him to get down to, basically 164, I think that is going to be a terrible idea as far as performance.
My thought, this is what my thought was, because I was thinking about after we had left the gym, because I was in that similar question where I was like, I feel like I could go, because I got to this weight in that mid 70s, down to 73.
You could do it.
Right. But there's a huge but.
There is.
And I asked you both about this. Was, what do you think? I feel like I would be I'd feel like an animal, like strength wise, but there's a huge fall off when it comes to cardio and then muscle endurance.
Yep.
And those sort of things.
Well, and look at what, you competed at middleweight and got podium at Worlds.
Well, and I didn't feel outstrengthed.
That's the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think, I think someone would be much better served keeping up, continue to lean out and really get on a solid strength training program.
And that's literally where I was going was instead of trying to just crash, because at some point there's going to be a crash cut. He's going to naturally fall to,
there's no doubt,
75, 73, if potentially. But then there's going to be the crash stuff, and that's going to be horrific. And instead, exactly my thought was get down to that mid 70 maintenance weight, and then put some muscle on. Put a few pounds of legit muscle.
I was going to say, isn't it just a body comp issue?
I would do with him compared, like how he's
because
comparing.
Because I know people who weigh the same as me, and we have or maybe same height or same weight, and look completely different, right?
Yeah.
So either more athletic or less athletic, so it's like it's just a composition issue of how much muscle to fat ratio.
But do you start, when you lose a lot of fat and you lean out pretty well and you still try to keep going, that's when you will start eating some muscle, right? And that's not going to help at that point.
And the strength advantage you think you have.
You're not going to have,
Well, and I don't know if you guys had the conversation or not, but the pitfalls of doing repeated cuts, right? And the long-term health impacts of that.
Yep.
Like in the long term, you're not doing yourself any good.
Especially at a middle age kind of, I assume it just compounds from being an early mid-20s person that's cutting to mid-30s and later.
You look at a lot of UFC fighters that retire, they get really big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of them, their body's like, oh, I'm holding on to, it just, that's repeated stresses, right?
And it's just, I assume it's crushing your endocrine system.
Yeah, it ain't good. It ain't good for a lot of your organ systems, kidneys, the whole
By yo-yoing like that?
Yeah, not good.
That would be this women in this country, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We've been fed a diet culture, and so we're constantly dieting, which
Right.
then causes us to constantly maintain, hold on to weight.
But, then of course we've gone back to that other swing of that pendulum, right? Where now they just are
That healthy at any weight thing.
healthy at any weight, which is a
It's just-
fallacy.
It's just BS.
Yeah.
Oh, for
I don't
sure.
know how else to say it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on semaglutide?
I mean, there's tons of research articles, and I tried not to get into the weeds with this today. I tried to keep it more just kind of conversational. So hopefully it didn't seem too disjointed as far as the conversation goes. But again, semaglutide is not just for someone who wants to just lose a couple of pounds for beach season, right? Really should be for those people that have tried and are struggling to lose weight and keep it off. And then, of course, if you have those other family histories of diabetes, dementias, et cetera, doing other things to help reduce that inflammation, I think is a good idea. Most insurance companies, in my opinion, have not covered it, even though there is an FDA-approved one for pre-diabetes and obesity, as those being the two pre-existing conditions. And even then, some of those people are still having to pay, like $300-400 out of pocket for something that's only going to last for a month. So if you have someone that knows how to use a compounding pharmacy and has an account set up, and talk with someone about putting that in if you need it. But it shouldn't be the only tool in your toolbox for weight loss.
Yeah. We did have one question that wasn't related to that, but it had to do with sweat. I think you might be able to answer this one quite well.
She's married to a sweaty person.
Exactly.
I don't do it.
Okay.
I don't sweat.
She doesn't sweat.
At all?
No.
She really doesn't sweat much at all.
I was thinking about that. I was like,
She doesn't sweat
I've never
much.
seen you sweat.
Well, this person has the opposite issue. They said, what if I'm always dumping sweat, even during warm-ups or light drills? I start sweating a bit already.
So did he listen to our previous one? We talked about sweating.
They commented on that video with this.
So I would start doing some experimentation and see, look at the stress response, look at sleep, look at how you're coming into training. For instance, today I was just teaching class and using you as an uke, and just by demonstrating over and over. And I was coming in a little overtrained. I've been tracking, like we've talked about.
Thing, yeah.
On your wearable?
My wearable, yeah.
Hey, Brittany.
Brittany likes that. So, but I'm noticing a big correlation I just started sweating like I was sparring, today. And I think that has to do with the state of my nervous system.
So you think that potential reason for him?
For sure.
Could it also be that he's just a fat shit?
Could be.
Bag of ass, as you like to say?
Could be. That's a medical term. You're not a doctor.
Yeah, you may not use bag of ass. That's a medical term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Okay.
Well, I think that's it then.
Cool.
If you guys do have any fat loss questions, just shoot them over to us. We can have Carrie on again. Maybe go a little bit more in depth on any sort of subject that's related to that kind of stuff. Stanwood Integrative Medicine. If you want to get an integrated medicine physician known as Carrie Hardy. Other than that, we'll see you guys later.
Deuces.
See ya.